For the last 20,000 years, something inside your skull has been quietly disappearing. You are walking around right now with a brain that is roughly 10% smaller than the one your Ice Age ancestors had. We are slowly losing the very thing that made us human. This contradicts everything taught about human evolution. For millions of years, the hominid brain only did one thing. It grew. It demanded more calories, forced us to master fire just to digest enough food to fuel it, and completely reshaped the female pelvis, just so mothers could survive birthing it. From the moment we stood upright, the brain was the single most expensive, prioritized organ in our bodies. Every other hominid that walked the earth before us paid a massive price to grow that brain. Our ancestors gave up climbing trees. They gave up jaw strength. They gave up the ability to outrun predators, all to funnel more energy into the skull. It was the biological engine that conquered a hostile planet. And then, right around the time we started building complex societies, that growth suddenly reversed. We are the only primate on Earth whose brain is actively shrinking. To understand why, you have to look at what happens when a species is broken. When humans took the wild gray wolf and bred it into the domestic dog, the dog's brain shrank by nearly 30%. When we turned the aggressive wild boar into the domestic pig, its brain shrank by a third. The same thing happened to cows, to sheep, to horses. Every single time a wild animal is tamed, it loses brain mass. But the strangest piece of evidence comes from a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev. In 1959, at a remote research facility in Siberia, Belyaev started breeding wild silver foxes, vulpes vulpes. He selected for one single trait, friendliness. He set up his cages in the freezing cold of Novosibirsk and walked down the rows wearing thick gloves, offering his hand to the foxes. Most of them snarled, most of them lunged at the wire, but a fraction of a percent just sniffed him. Those were the ones he bred. He didn't care about their fur or their size or their health, just tameness. By the 4th generation, the fox pups were wagging their tails. By the 10th generation, they were whining for human attention. By the 20th, they had become something completely unmoored from the wild. Their coats developed spotted patterns. Their tails curled up over their backs like pugs. Their skulls shrank. Their teeth became smaller. Belyaev had accidentally discovered a biological package deal. Friendliness requires breaking the wild body. In 2019, Harvard primatologist Richard Wrangham looked at that Siberian fox experiment and proposed an explanation for our shrinking brains that makes most people deeply uncomfortable. He argued that we have exactly the same physical symptoms as those foxes. Our faces soften, our jawbones shrank, our heavy brow ridges flattened out into smooth foreheads. We look like the tamed version of our own ancestors. But unlike the dogs and the pigs, there was no higher species standing over us, selecting which humans got to breed and which ones didn't. Wrangham calls it the execution of the alphas. For most of our deep history, humans lived in small bands dominated by the strongest, most aggressive males. The ones who took the food and monopolized the mates through sheer physical terror. They tried to rule through sheer mass. They guarded the resources. They built hierarchies out of bruises and broken bones. And it failed spectacularly. The bully strategy worked when we were just apes. But as our ancestors developed language, the rules of survival flipped. The weaker members of the tribe realized they could whisper in the dark. They could coordinate. A group of smaller men with wooden spears could wait until the alpha was sleeping and simply kill him. And they did. Across thousands of generations, human tribes systematically exiled or executed their most violent, domineering men. We weeded out raw aggression. We bred ourselves for compliance, for the ability to sit in a circle without killing each other. But that's not what paleoanthropology universally accepts. The mainstream consensus has a much less violent explanation for why your brain is smaller. It comes down to basic metabolic math. Brain tissue is massively expensive to maintain, burning up to a fifth of your daily calories. As human societies grew larger and more connected, we started storing information outside of our own heads. We invented written language. We developed specialized trades. You didn't need to know how to track an animal, build a shelter, identify toxic plants, and make a stone knife all by yourself. You could rely on the collective brain of the tribe. Evolution realized it was wasting calories maintaining a massive personal hard drive when a shared network was available. In 1856, quarry workers in a German valley uncovered the first Neanderthal skull. It was heavy, thick-browed, and contained a brain cavity much larger than yours. For a century, we looked at those bones and thought of them as primitive beasts, evolutionary failures who just weren't smart enough to survive. We told ourselves we won because we were the superior intelligence. We assumed our brains just kept getting better, sharper, more advanced. But the fossil record tells a much darker story. In 2021, an evolutionary biologist at Boston University named James Traniello wanted to know if this brain shrinkage happened to anyone else. He didn't look at apes. Instead, he looked at ants. He mapped the brains of 98 different ant species across millions of years of their history. He found a pattern that perfectly mirrors human evolution. When an ant colony is small, every individual worker needs a massive, complex brain. They have to know how to navigate, how to fight, how to build, how to forage all by themselves. But when a colony grows into a massive superorganism, something physical happens to the ants inside it. Their brains shrink. The ants stop being smart. The colony becomes the brain. In 1912, an anthropologist named Franz Boas tried to find an alternate explanation. He spent years measuring the heads of thousands of European immigrants arriving in New York. He believed he could prove that better American nutrition was physically expanding their children's skulls. He wanted a clean, progressive story about food and environment, making us stronger. He got the math right, but he completely missed the deep biological history staring back at him. We are not just shaped by what we eat. We are the primate that never grows up. We play well into old age. We learn constantly. We rely on each other forever. We traded the massive, aggressive, independent brain of our ancestors for a smaller, quieter one that needs to be surrounded by others just to function.